organized, fair, professional, and orderly manner. Offensive or profane language will not be allowed. I also want to let everyone know that we will not be answering questions or responding to any comments made during the hearing. Responses to comments will be included in the final environmental impact statement. We are interested in hearing comments from all participants. Please remember that the hearing is being recorded. Speak directly and clearly into the microphone and provide your full name, address, and any organization you may represent. To ensure all will be heard, there will be a 3-minute time limit for public testimony and 5-minute time limit for elected officials. The time will start after you introduce yourself. I will give you a signal when you have 30 seconds remaining and again when you have 10 seconds remaining so that you can wrap up your testimony. As the hearing officer, if you're unable to conclude your comments at the end of your time period, I will ask you to wrap up your testimony. Okay, thank you for allowing me to provide those opening remarks. We're going to move forward. I do want to first, before I call up our first speakers, I do want to recognize from the Maryland House of Delegates, Sid Saab's office, Asia Rodriguez, who's his legislative assistant. So I just wanted to welcome her and thank her for being here. In the back. Okay, we're going to go ahead and call on our first person to come up and provide comments. When you do come up, I ask you that you state your name, spell your name, provide your address and any organization that you may be representing. So our first speaker will be Peter Julian.
My name is Peter Julian. I'm a resident of Annapolis, Maryland, and I'm here representing myself.
Mr. Julian, just spell your name for the record.
Julian, last name. With respect to the study, I've broken it down into several items. Carter 7 issues would be Route 50 traffic capacity limitations as a feeder already exist to the existing bridge. Route 50 lane expansion limitations from I-97 to Governor Ritchie Highway are a reality. The Route 50 vulnerability to accident-based road closure on both sides of the bridge is another reality. These are problems with the Carter 7 situation. The additional factor is that it does not provide an infrastructure base for population and economic expansion, particularly on the Eastern Shore. And the rationale of put it in Annapolis, since they're already used to the traffic, is absurd. The governor's comments that he would only support Carter 7 should be ignored. Carter 6 and 8 have issues as well, and these Carters have no available land to build access roads, and the bay width would require long bridge spans at extremely higher costs. Now, there's Carter 12 and 13 benefits would be Western Shore access exists with routes 5, 4, and 2. It provides alternate route to a single thread bottleneck that exists to the Route 50 corridor. It also improves Eastern Shore access from Southern Maryland, DC, and Northern Virginia, thereby pulling traffic from the Route 50 corridor. Provides more direct access to Eastern Shore beaches without transiting Easton and Cambridge. It also provides an infrastructure base for economic expansion and population growth in both Southern Maryland and the central Delmarva Peninsula. It creates an infrastructure for future I-95 bypass around the Baltimore-Washington metropolitan traffic nightmare. A bridge in this area would be spanning one of the narrowest stretches of the bay, thereby reducing its construction and maintenance costs. Conclusion, the current approach does not take into account traffic and roadway issues associated with a third span in the Carter 7 environment. The current approach lacks vision for future growth in the state and seeks to replicate the issues created in Northern Virginia, i.e. the Route 66 corridor congestion. Southern Maryland may oppose the growth, but the state can't continue to cram it into Central and Northern Maryland. I ask that the commission be bold visionaries. If you build it, they will come.
Thank you, Mr. Julian. Okay, our next speaker will be Pat Lynch. After Pat will be Owen Taylor. Pat, can you come up, please state your name, spell your name, provide your address and any organization that you may be representing.
My name is Pat Lynch, Lynch. I live at 1648 Homewood Road in Annapolis. I live 2.5 miles west of the Bay Bridge. I am president of the Broadneck Council. I am vice president of Growth Action Network, which is a countywide advocacy group. I represented the Broadneck Peninsula on our county executives Citizens Advisory Committee for Plan 2040, the GDP. And I'm also a member of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Reconstruction Advisory Group. I've lived in the peninsula for over 50 years and have shared the frustration of Broadneck residents who deal with congested Route 50 traffic, unable to reach their homes on summer weekends due to eastbound beach traffic. In 2007, the Broadneck Council united leaders from local Broadneck communities to work with the MDTA with the hopes of improving the flow of traffic at our crossing to the Eastern Shore. Electronic tolling was implemented, but too many challenges have not been met as the MDTA makes their rules on management and operation of the Bay Bridges. The Broadneck Peninsula corridor was recently selected by the MDTA for the location of a third Bay Bridge. This alternative number 7 was announced to the public in February with the publication of the NEPA Tier 1 draft DEIS study. The members of the Broadneck Council and Peninsula residents are opposed to this selection. They'll add an additional crossing to the 2 spans already on the site. The Broadneck corridor is a congested crush of weekend traffic during summer months, and it's forecasted by the MDTA by growing by 1% to 2% a year over the next 20 years. There are currently about 118,000 vehicles a day crossing the bay during summer months, summer weekend, from the Broadneck. To note, the target date for the appropriate life of the old 1952 span has been set at a couple of different target dates, but one in the DEIS is 2040, the 20-year marker for replacement. This lifespan could be extended another 20 years, as we read in the LCCA report, but as stated in this 2015 report, this would require that millions and millions of dollars be spent on repair and maintenance that should be directed to fund a replacement bridge. The Bay study covers 100 miles of land bordering the Chesapeake Bay. Despite a goal of improving mobility over the current Broadneck crossing, it's impossible to acknowledge the fact that since the first bridge was built in 52, that in 70 years, another acceptable crossing site could be located within this 100-mile corridor. Then the newer third span was built. Here we have another one. You got 2 already, and now the third one on the Broadneck. We're facing a decision where to put this span, and we don't even know if it's going to be new or replacement. The direction is to add another span to this overcrowded beach corridor. The residents of the Broadneck Peninsula and Annapolis say enough. We are crushed with summer beach traffic, an old 2-lane bridge that must be replaced, and we object to the decision. And finally, in order to direct traffic away from the corridor, alternatives were considered that must be reconsidered, such as Calvert County in the north or above Pasadena, I'm sorry, in the south and above Pasadena in the north. We want to keep our Sandy Point State Park, we want to keep our communities, and we want to keep our peninsula whole and not full of approach roads and then for a third Bay Bridge span.
Thank you. Okay, our next speaker will be Owen Taylor. After Owen will be William Neville. Mr. Taylor, please state your name, spell your name, your address, and any organization that you may be representing.
Shoot, that's a lot of things to do.
I'll remind you, don't worry.
It's Owen Taylor, OwenTaylor. I live at 1304 Harmony Lane, Annapolis, Maryland, 21409.
which is on the Broadneck Peninsula. I'm a neighbor of Pat's, who did a wonderful job. And I reiterate everything she said. And I represent nobody but my neighbors. We all are united in the idea that another Bay Bridge at the Broadneck Peninsula is totally unacceptable for a number of reasons. The first reason is we feel at this time that the planning has been rushed, that the statistics that have been used up until now, road studies, things of that nature, have not taken into consideration current statistics, and particularly concerning the COVID. In addition to that, we feel that there is no need for a Bay Bridge in our area. One of the problems on the Route 50 is backups. And they go for miles and miles sometimes because of beach traffic. We contend that the present facilities, the roadways and things of that nature could be used in a more efficient way so as to allow for the present use of that corridor, and that would then satisfy the needs of the traffic. Things such as perhaps closing off exits so as to not allow traffic to leave and come back on, causing backups. Perhaps having a corridor from Route 97 all the way to the bridge, a continuous run without entrance, without exits, so as to allow a free flow of traffic. We also think that the future of automobiles, electric use, cars that will be self-driving, things of that nature, will help with the impact of traffic across the bridge so it no longer becomes the bottleneck that it appears to be now. The bottleneck could be relieved quite a bit if proper road studies were done. If we have a particular issue at Sandy Point, and one of the things that the local people have done concerning traffic is that we have limited access on the access roads that parallel Route 50. By limited net access, it has alleviated the access or the backup of roads in the communities through a different use. We are totally opposed to a new bridge at that location. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Taylor. Okay, our next speaker will be William Neville. Yes. After William Neville will be Michael Dodd. Mr. Neville, as you come up, if you could state your name and spell your name, provide your address, and if you're representing an organization.
I agree. That's a lot of things to do. My name is William Neville, and I live at 1612 Laurel Lane in a community called Amerly, and I live in the Broadneck Peninsula. Is that it?
Yeah, but just try to talk in the microphone. We got you, but just
Okay.
We want to make sure we hear everything you say.
First thing I want to comment on this, I hate to do this, but I have to. This is the most intimidating, constrained public hearing that I've ever been involved in. We're facing the panelists who cannot present or respond to our questions. You have to register for and sign in for the public hearing. Typically, those things are not done. But I know this is also constrained because of the COVID. So, but let me get into the precedent. I've already presented, left my written testimony, and I'm not going to have time to go through the whole thing, but I'll try to highlight. The Tier 1 DEIS report and process provides insufficient information for Anne Arundel County, its environs, including 48,000 residents of Broadneck, Therefore, a corridor selection, FEIS, and record of decision cannot and should not be made until the following deficiencies are corrected and provided in a revised DEIS. And here are some of the reasons. One, the county was excluded from being a major participant in the decision-making process that went on here. Two, there's no explanation of what the bridge is. Is it a new bridge, or is it a parallel bridge, or is it a bridge that takes down the other, the older facility and continues on? Why? These all impact the approach roads. In fact, the next couple of things are related to the approach roads. So how many lanes are the bridge? We don't know that either. And that again affects the approach roads. And the approach road details, we don't know what the situation, we don't know if they're going to survive because of the possibility of expanding and the widening of Route 50 and the other roads, and perhaps even creating a new bridge, the Severn River Bridge, which we just rebuilt. The purpose and need is way too limited. It doesn't meet NEPA requirements. It's a traffic study purpose and need, and it is not broad enough to consider the Chesapeake Bay region and its activities. The benefits of missing, the benefits of what this new bridge will bring to this region. It will be a tremendous impact, just like this bridge has been over the last 50 years. Lack of corridor analysis. And the other, I finally end up with the 10th item. Where and have you considered the new normal because of the COVID? So I'm asking at the end, how and when will your comments, our comments on this testimony, and all comments that have been provided be responded to? And I know you can't respond. You've been directed not to do that. So at some point, I hope somebody explains that. Thank you.
Thank you. I do want to just remind everyone that there are multiple ways that you can comment on the DEIS and the MDT RPCA in addition to your public comments here tonight. You can submit a comment form online or send an email or written letter. All those ways to comment are found on the Bay Crossing Study website. All comments must be received before 11:59 p.m. on May 10th, 2021. Our next speaker will be Michael Dodd. After Michael will be Lisa Maher. Michael, again, I know you've heard it, but just state your name and spell your name, your address, and any organization that you may be representing.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, my name is Michael Dodd, D-O-D-D. I live at 377 Colony Point Place in Edgewater, Maryland, and I represent myself. I've listened to the previous arguments, and they're certainly valid arguments. In a sense, when you propose a new bridge like this, it's like building a prison somewhere and no one wants it in their backyard. So I'm sure there's going to be opposition to any of these other alternatives other than the one that's so-called number 7, which is where the existing bridge is. There's certainly some compelling reasons to place a new bridge where the existing bridge is. Obviously, the infrastructure and roadways are already there. So it's why reinvent the wheel again and put that whole infrastructure and access roads, et cetera, limited access roads somewhere else along the bay, the Chesapeake Bay. No one likes the traffic. I've lived in the Annapolis area for 30 some years, and no one likes the traffic around Route 50. The weekends are a mess. But I'm sure that the people that have done the study have analyzed the traffic data. If you were to add 4 additional lanes, presumably the backups would be eliminated and the traffic would just smoothly go across all 3 bridges, or whether it's going to be, I assume it's going to be a third bridge, a third structure. And I don't know if it's 4 lanes or 6 lanes, but I cannot imagine that with those additional lanes, there would be any backup unless there's an accident of some sort. So I basically have come to the conclusion that it makes the most sense for Maryland residents, Virginia residents, and residents of the Eastern Shore to have the existing bridge stay where it is, obviously, and be added to. One other thing is, I don't know if it's been considered, is that many bridges around the country have access both to automobiles and rail. They're typically double-decker bridges. And I wonder if any consideration has been given to putting a second layer with 2 rail lines. The Washington Beltway is only 22 miles from the Bay Bridge. So it'd be relatively easy to extend their subway system to the bridge and then gain access to the Eastern Shore across the bridge, which would make employment for those, it'd be like an hour drive from the Eastern Shore to Washington, DC. That summarizes my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Lisa Maher. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. After Lisa will be Philip Reynolds. Lisa, as you approach the podium, again, if you could state your name and spell your name, your address, and any organization you may be representing.
I'm Lisa Meager, Meagher. I live. Lisa Meager, Meagher. I live at 1487 Norman Road in Chester. I'm on Kent Island. What else?
I think you're good. You can
Okay.
start your comments.
I am going to go complete opposite of the last gentleman. Emergency vehicles cannot move during summer at all on any of our side roads. God forbid there's an emergency, they could walk faster to a hospital. Yesterday was an accident on the bridge. Took me an hour and a half to get home. That's fine. However, emergency vehicles are trying to come down on Main Street. They can't move. I'm 3.5 miles away from the bridge. All of Kent Island is at a standstill, complete standstill on Saturdays and Sundays during the summer months. Our infrastructure doesn't have enough to hold the summer traffic. I would love for any of you higher ups, as well as Governor Hogan and the higher ups in government, to come and spend a weekend on the island and try to move on Saturday and Sunday during the summer months, and then see if that's the right way to go. I think number 2 and 13 would be great. Have a lot less water to go over, so less money to build the bridges. And piggybacking on the first gentleman who spoke, the number 13, I believe, 12 and 13, could add more funds and employment down to the southern end of there. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Reynolds, indicated he doesn't wish to provide any testimony, so we're going to. Next up will be Richard Dick Ladd. After Richard will be Britt Griswold. Ladd, again, if you could just state your name, provide your address, and the organization you are representing.
Richard's the legal name, more common known as Dick Ladd, L-A-D-D. I currently live on Kent Island, but I'm a 26-year resident of Anne Arundel County in the immediate area of the bridge. So I'm here to say that I think I'm very disappointed in the structure of the study. We call it a bridge study, and it should be a corridor study. The problem is congestion on this in our neighborhood. It's the same thing on Kent Island. We have a congestion problem. It's not uncommon within the state. The problem only comes out about like 25th or 26th on the state's list. Therein lies our problem. So we have a corridor problem with congestion. Being as far down on the list as it is, nothing is going to happen here until 2040.
Now, whether that's a function of priority or availability of funds, I care not which. But the consequence of this is we have a three-stage problem. We have a now, a 2040 problem, and a 2065 problem. People here are talking tonight about the 2040, 2065 problem in large. I want to focus on the now problem because that's the problem we have. And in 20 years' time, there is nothing in this plan that's going to affect the problems we have in our community, not one whit. And that is fundamentally wrong. I sit in the traffic like everybody else and it backs up. I lived on Cape Cod or near Cape Cod, and I understand about summer traffic. We have minor summer traffic today. It's a nuisance. I don't quibble with that. But I peril the thought of what it's going to be like on this community and on Kent Island in 10 years and in 15 years. That is a scary proposition. And I see nothing in this study that anticipates that. Now, I say you ought to pause this study. You ought to put somebody on state highway on this sucker and do it quick because it's his problem. It's not a bridge problem. We have a throughput problem. I can run 6,000 vehicles an hour up to the bridge and I can get 4,500 across now. That is the problem. So somebody has got to explain, somebody, not to me, I'm not going to live here long, live long enough, how we're going to get those additional vehicles across the bridge. Whether it's a new bridge, something else, but you've got 20 years to figure out how to do that. That, my friend, is a problem. There are a lot of things that can be done. I've studied a lot of other bridges around. There are things that can be done. Shaky, require a little bit of aggressiveness. Federal highway will give you some slack on 12-foot lanes. They may, without an argument, you may be able to get them down to 10-foot lanes. I would like to see an engineering study that says, how do I get an extra foot or two on some of these lanes? I think that some sort of an engineering analysis might show that we can get an additional lane onto that bridge. If I can get a lane on there and avoid the contraflow, you avoid the bullshit like we saw today or yesterday.
Please watch your language.
All right. So I'm saying we've got a very flawed, structured study on this thing. And it's not your fault. It's just that we're not answering the problem. We're answering somebody else's problem. And it isn't what this community needs, period. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lapp. Okay, our next speaker will be Rick Griswold. After Mr. Griswold will be David Humphreys. Thank you. Mr. Griswold, again, please state your name and spell your name, your address, and any organization that you may be representing.
My full name is Theophilus Britt Griswold, THEOPHILUSBRITTGRISWOLD. I live at 823 Holly Drive East, Annapolis, Maryland, 21409. It's on the Broadneck. Tonight, I'm representing myself. Okay, the Tier 1 Bay Crossing Study has cut corners with its inexpensive approach to a complex problem. By giving short shrift to important factors, basically ignoring all considerations except traffic flow, the resulting report provides too little information to make an informed, smart decision for Maryland's future. By not even studying a proper large sample of traffic conditions and not properly assessing the future of traffic, this limited study fails to be relevant to the future of Maryland. There are important factors that should have been deeply considered for the purpose and need of this project. One, the potential for automation to manage traffic flow. The approach roads need the same level of serious attention for managing the flow that the roads that we do have. Effects on the Eastern Shore development and the environmental harm of sprawl. 3, generating greater traffic flow in the restricted environment of the number 7 corridor. The approach roads did not receive a serious review for assessment of what would be sacrificed to make this work. Redundancy of national security and even protection from normal disruptions. The selection of the current corridor, still means we have a bottleneck that can be easily blocked Redundancy should have had a much greater weight in this process. I believe fulfilling the true intent of a purpose and need study requires a pause or a halt to this record of decision until these other aspects are deeply studied to allow a truly well-considered decision to be made. Maximizing traffic is not the only need for Maryland and should not eclipse all other factors. At a minimum, the study should be looking at how the purpose and needs of Maryland can be met by true alternatives to the north and south of Corridor 7. The number 6 and number 8 corridors are not true alternatives. They all lead to traffic gridlock when things go bad on the bridge or approach roads in Central, Anne Arundel, or Queen Anne's County. All are tied to Route 50 and 301 corridor to some extent. Deeper study of a crossing near Baltimore or south in Calvert County, or a no-build option with technological mitigation, will provide the level of information that we need to truly make an informed decision on the future of transportation across Maryland. Please halt this process and obtain the proper level of detail required to make smart decisions for the people of Maryland. Thank you.
Thank you. If you are here in the audience and just listening, and you decide you would like to provide testimony, just go outside and just let the person at the registration table know. Okay, our next speaker will be Humphreys. After Mr. Humphreys will be Phil Ferrara. Mr. Humphreys, again, your name, please. Please spell it, your address, and any organization you may be representing.
My name is Dave Humphreys. For a period of 10 years, I represented an organization known as ARTMA, the Annapolis Regional Transportation Management Association. It's a long one. That's why it was called ARTMA. I have over 50 years experience as a professional engineer and transportation planner. So I'm here representing my profession, if you will.
If you could just spell your name for the court.
Oh, I didn't do that. Humphreys, H-U-M-P. H-R-E-Y-S and P-E after that. My true concern here, and others have mentioned a lot of the things that I'll briefly go over. I'm also the author of the editorial on Monday in the Capital newspaper. It's a truncated version of what I'm submitting here tonight. So I'm going to only speak extemporaneously. I'm not going to read anything. The study is the result of a political process for at least 30 years of kicking the can down the road. We're now faced with 2 aging bridges, unbelievable congestion, safety issues, last night, a prime example, that people have accepted. This is what the norm is. It's just wrong. This study is also wrong because what it is doing is making a rush to judgment and using the term corridor analysis when in fact there was none. There was no corridor analysis of 50 and 301 or any of the other corridors. All they were bridge locations. I remind you that a bridge is not a corridor, it's a component of a corridor. This study has taken no attempt to do a long-range planning effort. And that has to preclude the things that are addressed in this study. This is a traffic study. That's all it is of the bridge. The reality is there needs to be another crossing. A comprehensive planning effort would produce such a result. And my colleague mentioned that there's nothing we can do now because we've kicked this can down the road. We have these tired old bridges. We have these unsafe, under-designed bridges. And we're faced with continuing horror of congestion. Kent Island on Sundays, completely blocked. Nonetheless, there are some things that can be done, and that has not been broached here. In the short term, another thing I did was I had a research career with the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And in that life, we develop what are things called ITS technologies right now, digital image recognition systems. I led the group that did that. There are technologies now, we could platoon vehicles on, say, 5301 on Sunday afternoon, preclude trucks, close a couple of access ramps, and we can actually get the volumes we have now through. And if we can get that going, we will then stave off some of the future congestion. But we're where we are now because we did not plan correctly. I request a pause in this study and do it right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, look at that.
Do you have something you want to submit? Yes. So hold on for 1 second. Okay, our next speaker will be Phil Ferrara. After Mr. Ferrara will be Argan Fernando. I hope I pronounced that right. I'm sure I did. Mr. Ferrara, if you could just state your name and spell your name, and then your address and any organization you may be representing.
May I take this off?
Yes, you can.
Good evening. My name is Phil Ferrara. That's spelled Ferrara. I'm a resident of Ravelston Terrace, Arnold, Maryland, a citizen of Anne Arundel County, and from the Stonington community. This evening, I urge the support of the MDTA to make no decision at this time concerning the building of a new or replacement Chesapeake Bay Bridge. The primary issue is that the purpose and need study statement of the Tier 1 NEPA study is too limited and fails to be creative. In short, it does not serve us well as citizens of Maryland. It does not consider and provide for greater statewide economic benefits and the advantages to be gained in other corridors. It gives no consideration to an alternative corridor placement for safety or evacuation or redundancy in the event of any kind of existing structure damage or blockage for any reason. Perfect example last night or Sunday night. As well, the existing corridor is not the most direct path to the Eastern Shore's coast resorts and attractions. The decision to lock in Corridor 7 right now for subsequent sometime in the future Tier 2 preliminary design work is premature without knowing and evaluating the extensive shoreside impacts. Adequate information has not been provided as to the extensive infrastructure changes that must be made to all roads, all bridges for 100 miles, both east and west of the current bridge location. A more effective study that is not focused solely on the narrow vision of reduction of traffic on existing structures may very well point to another beneficial Maryland corridor. Keep in mind, and this is so important, this is a $10 or $15 billion proposed project in today's monies. And that will be our route across the bay for 100 years with regional and multi-state traffic and transportation impacts. How will the people 50 and 100 years look back upon us for our failures? The final EIS and record of decision must be put on hold until these and other much broader, more important issues are evaluated in this decision-making process. I would say this to the Federal Highway Administration. This study consists of very narrowly collected data,
30 seconds.
and it was not well distilled. I say to you, this proposal you have, you must not build. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Argan Van Andel. Again, I apologize if I Didn't do a very good job of that, but if you could say your name and spell your name.
Arjan Van Andel, yes. It's Arjan, is the first name. Last name is Van, Vandel.
Your address in any organization you may be
Yeah,
representing.
my address is 330 Roslair Drive, Arnold, Maryland. Also, I represent the Anne Arundel County Transportation Commission. I'm the chair of the Transportation Commission of Anne Arundel County. Yeah, so we had discussions in the Transportation Commission also about the Bay Bridge. And one of the fundamental assumptions that is being highlighted is that there is an extra need for capacity, which we doubt that there is the need for. There is always a need in the weekends, Saturdays to extend capacity, but on the other hand, there has not been done a lot of studies to evaluate what are the alternatives to spread the peak hours. As we mentioned also before, we think that the studies are limited and have not taken into account the impact on the neighboring areas. So that's one thing that we would like to make a point of. Also, what we would like to mention is that instead of looking at a new span, we would like to see the option of possibly replacing the existing spans, possibly with a new bridge, because we think at the time when this third span is going to be built, the two existing spans might be up for renewal. And keeping those two up for in place will cost a lot of money. And we are thinking, would it not be making more sense to basically add another bridge, replacing the current two spans, possibly with direction, and also taking into account the opportunity for bicyclists and pedestrians, and also taking into account the possibility to bring in rail transportation, which was not necessarily completely evaluated in the study as much as we're aware. So we want to make a few points. Again, in saying, like, if there's any option chosen, we would like to make sure that the bridge is also suitable for pedestrians and bicycles. The other point, as I mentioned earlier, we would like to make sure that there's going to be a more and larger evaluation of the impact on the region and the real need for a capacity and the impact on the neighboring neighborhoods and businesses. Because we don't know if the capacity around the bridge will be enough, if there's just going to be a lot of extra capacity added by a third span. And at the last point, as I mentioned earlier as well, we would recommend to evaluate an option where the two spans are just going to be replaced by a third span. And that takes 3 lanes in both directions, so that we have a more balanced mobility offering in the region. That's it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, at this time, I have not been given a card indicating that there's anyone else who wishes to provide comments. This hearing will remain open until 8 o'clock tonight. Right now, it is 6:49 p.m. So what we will do is we will go into recess. We will wait to see if anyone else shows up, signs up to provide public testimony. I will come back at 7 o'clock just to provide an update. Or if someone does sign up between now and 7 o'clock, we will come right back from our recess to allow that person to provide testimony. I do want to offer a reminder that tonight is one of 2 public hearing sessions. We are having a second public hearing tomorrow night from 6 to 8 over on Kent Island. It's at the American Legion in Stevensonville. So the public is more than welcome to sign up to attend that public hearing as well. So for right now, we are in recess. It is 6:50. And again, I'll come back at 7 o'clock unless we have someone who signs up to provide testimony. Thank you.
Thank you for attending the Chesapeake Bay Crossing Study public hearing. Today's session runs from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Thank you for attending the Chesapeake Bay Crossing Study public hearing. Today's session runs from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Thank you for attending the Chesapeake Bay Crossing Study public hearing. Today's session runs from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Thank you for attending the Chesapeake Bay Crossing Study public hearing. Today's session runs from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is 7:00 p.m. We still are in recess at this time. We have not had anyone else arrive who has indicated an interest in making a public statement, public comments. So we are going to remain in recess until 7:15 p.m. I do want to alert people that apparently when I read my opening comments, it was not being picked up on the YouTube Live. All comments that the public made were picked up. So at 7:15, I am going to repeat my opening remarks, just my opening remarks, just so we have that on the record. So right now, we will remain in recess until 7:15 or until someone shows up wanting to give testimony. Thank you. Testing. Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing, testing. Testing, 1, 2, 3. I'm here talking with Mrs. Lodgman. Reserves a raise. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Tim Corbin, can you hear me? Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Tim, where are you? You're supposed to solve all my problems, Tim. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. It is 7:05 and we are still in recess. I mean, I can't talk any louder without screaming. Testing 1, 2, 3,
Thank you for
4. This
attending
is
the
not good
Chesapeake
wise
Bay
stereo
Crossing
text.
Study public hearing. Today's session runs from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Thank you for attending the Chesapeake Bay Crossing Study public hearing. Today's session runs from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Thank you for attending the Chesapeake Bay Crossing Study public hearing. Today's session runs from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m.
my opening remarks. So just in case anyone's listening and was not able to hear that, I am going to repeat my opening script. We will then see if there are any people who have shown up to provide testimony, and if not, we will go back into recess. So I am going to reread my script at this point. Good evening, I am Andrew Bing, and I will be facilitating today's hearing for the Maryland Transportation Authority, abbreviated as MDTA. Today is the first of two in-person public hearing testimony sessions that MDTA will be conducting for the Bay Crossing Study Tier 1 National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, Draft Environmental Impact Statement, or DEIS. I will be the hearing officer and am responsible for running today's public hearing. Today's hearing is being held jointly by MDTA and the Federal Highway Administration. On behalf of those agencies, I welcome you. The purpose of this hearing is for interested parties to provide official testimony and comments on the DEIS and the MDTA's recommended preferred corridor alternative, abbreviated as RPCA. We hope you have had the chance to review the DEIS and public hearing materials on the project website or at one of our DEIS viewing locations. A copy of the DEIS and materials are available for you to review at the registration table if you have not had the opportunity to do so. Today, I will review the hearing procedures, introduce the MDTA Bay Crossing Study BCS Project Manager and the Federal Highway Administration's Environmental Program Manager, explain Title VI in the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and identify ways for you to comment on the DEIS and MDTA RPCA. I will then open the floor for live testimony. Today's public hearing is being live streamed and audio recorded. The official transcript of the public hearing testimony will become part of the project record and will be available for public review on the Bay Crossing Study Project website. I will now introduce the panelists. In attendance tonight is Ms. Heather Lowe, Bay Crossing Study Project Manager with MDTA. And joining us remotely is Ms. Jeanette Marr, Environmental Program Manager for FHWA Maryland Division. On behalf of Sherry Davis, the MDTA Title VI officer, I will explain the significance of Title VI and how it relates to the transportation project planning process. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was put into effect to prohibit discrimination on the basis of race, color, or national origin. To support the act, the United States government designated additional statutes, laws, regulations, and executive orders to provide guidance for the effective execution of the objectives of Title VI. MDTA is required by law to uphold the principles of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and related guidance. MDTA's policies and programs should not discriminate against people on the grounds of race, color, national origin, sex, age, English proficiency, income level, or disability. The MDTA policies and programs should avoid disproportionately high or adverse impacts on minority populations and low-income populations. MDTA seeks to provide citizens, stakeholder groups, and other interested parties with reasonable opportunities to be involved in the planning process. We invite you to take our voluntary demographic survey to help us ensure that we are reaching the communities that are affected by the Bay Crossing Tier 1 NEPA study. If you have questions or need assistance, call 410-537-1029. For more information regarding Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and other non-discrimination laws, review the Civil Rights under Title VI brochure. Any member of the public has the right to file a discrimination complaint against MDTA if they feel MDTA does not comply with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the related statutes. Title VI information can be found on the project website by visiting the Participate and Provide Feedback page. There are multiple ways to comment on the DEIS and the MDTA RPCA. You can provide one-on-one or public oral testimony through the public hearing in-person testimony sessions. You can also complete a comment form online or send an email or written letter. Details on ways to comment can be found on the project website, baycrossingstudy.com. By visiting the Submit Comments page under the Public Involvements tab, comments must be received before 11:59 p.m. on May 10th, 2021. All comments received, whether at the hearing through oral testimony or through other methods such as a comment form, email, or mail, will be given equal consideration. Again, the purpose of this public hearing is to allow interested parties to provide public comments on the DEIS and MDTA RPCA. We ask that you follow social distancing guidelines, including maintaining a distance of 6 feet apart from other participants and wearing your mask at all times, including at the microphone. The microphone and podium will be clean between each participant. My role as the hearing officer is to run a professional and orderly public hearing. I understand how important the issues are related to the DEIS and the MDTA RPCA, and I take my role as hearing officer seriously. I am committed to providing members of the public an opportunity to provide comments in an organized, fair, professional, and orderly manner. Offensive or profane language will not be allowed. I also want to let everyone know that we will not be answering questions or responding to any comments made during the hearing. Responses to comments will be included in the final environmental impact statement. We are interested in hearing comments from all participants. Please remember that the hearing is being recorded. Speak directly and clearly into the microphone and provide your full name, address, and any organization you may be representing. To ensure all will be heard, there'll be a 3-minute time limit for public testimony and a 5-minute time limit for elected officials. The time will start after you introduce yourself. I will give you a signal when you have 30 seconds remaining, again, when you have 10 seconds remaining, so that you can wrap up your testimony. As the hearing officer, if you are unable to conclude your comments at the end of your time period, I will ask you to wrap up your testimony. So those were my opening remarks that I provided at 6 o'clock. Again, we apologize that some people were not able to hear that, but I wanted to read those back into the record just so everyone had the same opportunity to hear all the information presented tonight. So right now it is 7:22. We still do not have anyone who has shown up to provide testimony since the initial people who provided their testimony. We will come back on the record at 7:40 for me to provide an update. If anyone does show up between now and 7:40, we will come back on the record to allow them to provide their testimony. But if we do not have anyone show up, I will come back at 7:40 with another update. So we are in recess.
Thank you for attending the Chesapeake Bay Crossing Study public hearing. Today's session runs from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Thank you for attending the Chesapeake Bay Crossing Study public hearing. Today's session runs from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Thank you for attending the Chesapeake Bay Crossing Study public hearing. Today's session runs from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Thank you for attending the Chesapeake Bay Crossing Study public hearing. Today's session runs from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Thank you for attending the Chesapeake Bay Crossing Study public hearing. Today's session runs from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Thank you for attending the Chesapeake Bay Crossing Study public hearing. Today's session runs from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Okay, it is now 8 o'clock. At this point, we are going to close tonight's public hearing. We thank everyone who did show up and provided their public comments. I do want to provide a reminder that the next public hearing will take place tomorrow night in Kent Island from 6 to 8 p.m. at the American Legion. Again, you need to go to baycrossingstudy.com to sign up in order to provide testimony tomorrow. As a reminder, the public comment period will remain open until May 10th, 2021. Again, please visit baycrossingstudy.com to submit your comments. Thank you and good night.
Thank you for attending the Chesapeake Bay Crossing Study public hearing. Today's session runs from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m.